Today I'm making one of my fastest quilts ever using only leftover jelly roll strips and a bit of extra fabric. No complicated cutting, no tricky matching, just a fun, fast project you can make in about an hour. Let me show you how it all comes together. I have these leftover jelly roll strips from the Gustav Klimt quilt video I made a couple of weeks ago. The prints are absolutely lovely, and I wanted to use the remaining strips to create a quilt that's both special and quick to make. First, we need to sew all these pretty strips of fabric into groups of 5. Let's make our fabric combinations. We want a little bit of everything, from dark to very light. Preferably the lighter ones mixed in and not at the end. And then we sew. You know, now that I think of it, there are a lot of quilt patterns I make that start out with 5 strips sewn together, and I have no idea why I don't make, 3 or 6 or 4 or whatever. I guess 5 makes sense because it makes a perfect 10-inch count. Also, 10 inches make it pretty easy to fill a whole quilt top without having to have, a lot of trouble to make it happen. Not a lot of quilt blocks needed. And you know how much I love quick and easy but stunning, right? The quick and easy comes from it being jelly roll strips, pre-cut strips of fabric that you can easily replace with cutting 2.5-inch strips of your own. And these fabrics are absolutely stunning. I just wish they had made more of them because they are sold out everywhere, and that's such a shame. If they were still available, I'd snap up every last bit of it. I really love this collection. Luckily, I think there are still some charm packs left, so I'll drop a link in the description for you. Now, a lot of people prefer to sew these strips from different directions every time. The idea is if you change directions as you sew, you'll get straighter strips. However, because for some reason jelly roll strips never have the exact same size, some are longer than others, I don't like doing that. So I always sew them in the exact same direction. And maybe because there are just 5 of these strips, I don't really notice any wonkiness, apart from my inability of sewing them the exact same seam allowance every single time. Okay, our 5 strip groups are done. Time to press them real quick before we cut. We need the seams nice and flat. And I just realized you can totally use layer cake bundles for this because we are cutting these into 10-inch squares. So imagine this, you have 10-inch layer cake squares. All you need to do is cut the 10-inch square into 4 2.5-inch strips. Then you mix them all up and sew them, and you get this exact same result. So yeah, you don't necessarily need a jelly roll to make this quick. There are other ways. And before you know it, this is what we have. Next, we add a white fabric to our mix. And I know I do this often. And no, it does not have to be white. It can be whatever color creates a great contrast with the fabrics you're using. I would say though that a solid is better than a pattern fabric for this, unless the fabrics you're using are solids, of course, in which case a pattern fabric will look lovely. We want a pattern interrupt here, something that takes your eyes away from the predominant fabric. We need 2.5-inch by 10-inch strips of white. What I'm doing though, just to be on the safe side, I am cutting 2.5-inch long strips, and then I'm sewing the squares onto the long strip, and only then will I cut them into the smaller pieces. This way, I'm sure that even if my squares aren't exactly 10 inches, I'm still covering the whole thing. I'm adding this fabric to one side of the square, and it's one of the 2 sides that cover all the strips. I love using sashing for my quilts. They always seem to bring the whole design up like 10 notches. For this design, I'm trying something I've never tried before. I'm adding the white only to one side, and I'm kind of wondering if this is sashing or just another element. To me, it's kind of a sashing because it separates the squares, but I'm not really sure. And this is what we get, a rectangle of sorts. 10 by 12 inches to be more precise. Let's press it again. Time to puzzle. This is more versatile than you'd think. Let me see what we can do with this. Cute. I guess this way it really does look like sashing. But this is what I had in mind. I just want the square separated horizontally. This does look cute, but I wonder what it would look like diagonally. You know me, if I have the option, I'm always going to do something diagonally. You get that extra work of having to work, those sides and corners out, but totally worth it though. Yeah, so much better. As you could probably tell, I wasn't too careful when mismatching my squares. I tried to place the white in the middle of the square, but I didn't really measure it or anything. I don't think any mistake will look too obvious once we're done, but I did try to make sure they were nicely balanced, because this way we have a sort of pattern between all the whites instead of just being completely all over the place. Personally, I'd be fine with it, but mine, not so much. He's very into perfectly geometrical patterns. He actually says that filming my free flow quilts is like giving his eyeballs a headache. Go figure. Just kidding. The pattern for the white pieces makes totally sense for this pattern. So if you prefer to measure it to make sure it's on point, just do that. Be a Mike, why don't you? Let's press this quilt top one last time before I can show you the final results in all its glory. This truly is one of the most beautiful quilt tops I've ever made, and I can't even take credit for that. It's all about the fabrics. And here we have it, the last remaining strips of our Gustav Klimt jelly roll put to very good use with this stunning quilt pattern. How easy was this? A one-of-a-kind quilt top you can look at for a very long time and still find new little details each and every time. I hope you had fun. I know I had a blast, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.